Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this online event hosted by the Embassy of Japan. My name's Callum Forbes, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. A few housekeeping announcements before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and we'll be posting it on social media afterwards. So if there's anything you miss, you can catch it up later and share with friends and family who otherwise weren't able to make it today. We're also in a webinar format, so your cameras are turned off and so is your microphone, but that doesn't mean we don't want you to take part. Please make good use of the chat function. And also we will be taking questions throughout to our wonderful chefs. So we'd very much appreciate if you put any questions that spring to your mind as we're going along in the Q&A. About today's session, currently Kew Gardens are hosting their Autumn Festival Japan. And as part of this festival, Kew wanted to serve washoku, Japanese food, to the people who attend. The embassy brought together Kew Gardens with Chef Daisuke Hayashi to make this happen. But what did they set out to achieve? What is the spirit of Washoku? What were they trying to bring out in the menu? These were some of the interesting upshots and questions of the training session that we're planning on talking about today. So to begin with, I would like to introduce Chef Daisuke Hayashi. Chef Hayashi worked as the deputy chef at Michelin-starred Kikonoi in Akasaka in Tokyo, before beginning his international culinary career in 2009 in London. He's given a range of workshops at universities, schools, and to industry professionals alike on Japanese cooking, and is the Deputy Director of the Japanese Culinary Academy UK. He's been working alongside Berwa Ahmed at Kew Gardens to create a Japanese menu all across the different outlets that they have there, from canteen-styled food to four-course evening menus, all as part of their month-long festival Japan, which is taking place this October. Hello, Chef Hayashi.
はい、こんにちは。
Hello.
So you must be very busy at the moment with the opening of Roketsu London coming next month, and also with working on this festival at Kew. How are things progressing with the menu?
はい、今ちょうどですね、京都から5名ほど、職人さんがいらっしゃって内装を作ってもらっている。バタバタしてます、今。
Roketsu is very busy at the moment. Yes, I have about 5 people working with me at the moment, and we're getting everything ready over there.
I think we're all desperately excited to see what you produce once the menu is open, the restaurant is open. I understand when you're working together with Kew to develop this Japanese menu that they're serving, you wanted to capture the spirit of washoku in the dishes. Could you maybe begin just by letting us know a little bit about what this is, the sort of theory behind Japanese cooking?
和食のスピリッツ、難しい質問ですね。これから日本の食文化についてご説明いたしますので、そこでじっくり聞いてください。
It's not an easy question to answer, the spirit of washoku, but I'm about to take you through a presentation on Japanese cuisine, and hopefully that will give you more of a flavor of it.
はい、それではこれから日本の食文化についてお話をさせていただきます。まずは地理についてから始めます。
So let's start by looking at the geography of Japan.
日本は、ユーラシア大陸の東の果て、太平洋北西部に位置する細長い国土を持つ国です。そして国土の中心に背骨のように山が連なっています。
Japan is a long, narrow country located in the northwest Pacific Ocean at the eastern edge of the Eurasian continent. It has a backbone of mountains running down the center of the country.
そして周りには寒流と暖流が流れており、そのぶつかるところには両方の海流の魚が集まりやすく、また餌となるプランクトンが豊富で魚が繁殖しやすいため、魚の種類が豊富なのが特徴ですね。
It's surrounded by both cold and warm currents, and where the currents collide, you get both fish from cold and warm seas. There's also an abundance of plankton, which is a food source for the fish, making it easy for fish to breed and resulting in a wide variety of fish.
そして日本は温帯気候であり、その国土の 70% は森林です。
Japan has a temperate climate, and 70% of its land is covered in forest.
1年を通して比較的雨が多く、年間の平均雨量が1700ミリという世界の平均の2倍になります。
Rainfall is relatively abundant throughout the year. The average rainfall is around 1,700 milliliters, which is twice the global average.
そして山に降った雨は落ち葉によって作られた資源を水としてでも豊かに育っています。
Rain falls on the mountains, gathers up the nutrients from the fallen leaves, etc., and carries those nutrients down into the rivers and to the ocean. This feeds the plankton that then feed the fish.
によって栄養たっぷりの野菜を育て、和食は水の恵みからあらゆる食材を得ているのです。
This water is also what gives us all the nutritious vegetables. So you can see that water really plays a key part in Japanese ingredients and cuisine.
そして亜熱帯の気候帯に囲まれ、アジアモンスーンに属しているため、季節の変化がはっきりしているのも特徴ですね。
Japan is surrounded by subtropical climates and affected by Asian monsoons. And you have 4 distinct seasons in the Japanese year.
そのために季節ごとに食材が豊富にあり、日本人は食材の旬を大切にして、旬の食材や料理を通して季節を味わう文化を持っています。
As a result, there's an abundance of ingredients unique to each of the seasons, and Japanese people really value the seasonality of food and have a culture of savoring the seasons through seasonal food and cooking.
そして、日本人は自然からの恵みである米を主食として生きてきました。そして、日本において神様と、食べ物の関係は深く、私たち人間は、神様に生かされており、そして人間は神様からのお下がりをいただくという考え方が根本にあります。
One of the blessings that nature gives us in Japan is rice, and this has long been the staple food of the Japanese people. In Japan, the relationship between religion and food runs deep, and there's a fundamental belief that we are kept alive by the gods, and it's they that provide our food.
そして食材は神の創造物であり、完璧であるがごとく極力を手を、加えず、そして、人間ごときが味をつけることなどもってのかという考え方を持っており、味は添えるもの、すなわち日本料理は、素材を生かすための引き算の料理と言えます。
Ingredients are created by the gods and are hence perfect. We should eat them as if they are perfect, with as little modification as possible. It's unthinkable that we should try to modify or add flavor to food. Flavors must be drawn out and combined. In other words, Japanese cuisine is all about taking things away to make the most of the ingredients.
そして米は炊いて食べるだけではなく、麹の原料にもなります。
Rice isn't just cooked and eaten, it's also the basis of koji.
そして麹とは麹菌という日本特有の微生物を蒸した米に繁殖させて作られたものです。
Koji is a malt-like substance obtained from growing a unique Japanese microorganism on steamed rice.
そして麹と米が発酵すると日本酒ができ、水を一切加えずに出来上がるワインとは異なって、米と水と麹から酒ができ、酒がさらに発酵するとお酢ができます。
Fermenting koji and rice produces sake, which, unlike wine, which doesn't require any additional water, needs rice, water, and koji. And if you ferment that sake further, it becomes vinegar.
また、米、麹、麦と大豆から味噌や醤油が作れます。
If you mix rice with koji, barley, and soybeans, you can also make miso and soy sauce.
Chef Hayashi, I think we might need you to repeat that last slide. I think we may have just lost you by some technical difficulties there. Could you just kindly repeat yourself, please?
Hi. Hi. このように、料理に必要なものはすべからく米と水からできているということが言えますね。
So you can say that everything you need to make Japanese cooking really begins with rice and water.
そして、日本料理は世界一、水を使い、また大切にしています。日本の食文化の中で、水より清いものはありません。食材を聖なる水で清める、洗い流すですね。そして食材のアクを取り除くために水でこしたり茹でたりします。
Japanese cuisine uses and values water more than any cuisine in the world. In Japanese culture, nothing is purer than water. Ingredients that are cleansed or rinsed with sacred water and then blanched or boiled in water to remove any harsh taste from the ingredients.
そして酒を作ったり豆腐や生麩などを作り出します。まただしも水がなければ引けません。つまり、水がなければ日本料理を作ることができないということです。
We use the same water to make sake, to make tofu and fu, and dashi, stock can't be made without water. So in other words, without water, it's impossible to make washoku, Japanese cuisine.
そして日本料理と西洋料理の水分量を比較しましたところ、懐石料理は 80%、西洋料理は 65% と、この数字を見るだけでも日本料理が、水分が多いということが言えますね。
If you compare the water content of Japanese and Western cuisine, Kaiseki cuisine is 80% water, and Western cuisine is 65% water. So that shows just how much water there is in Japanese food.
次に日本で最も代表的なだし、昆布とカツオから取る一番だしのご説明をさせていただきます。
Allow me to introduce you next to the most typical Japanese dashi stock, ichiban dashi, which is made using kombu, kelp, and dried bonito, katsuobushi.
作り方ですけども、鍋に、軟水、できるだけ柔らかい水がいいですね。軟水と昆布を入れまして、火をつけて60度まで温度を上げて1時間保って、そして昆布を引き上げて温度を85度まで上げてから鰹節を入れて30秒経ったらこします。
You start with water that is as soft as you can possibly get. Add your kombu, your kelp, into the pot and turn on the heat. Increase the temperature to 60 degrees and keep it simmering there for 1 hour. Then you want to take out the kelp, increase the temperature again to 85 degrees. Then put in the katsuobushi, the bonito flakes, and take them out after just 30 seconds.
こうして一番だしが完成します。一番だしはシンプルでありながら昆布のグルタミン酸とカツオのイノシン酸という旨味成分によって構成されています。
And there you have your ichiban dashi stock. It may be simple, but it's made up of the umami elements of glutamic acid from the kelp and inosinic acid from the bonito.
で、ここで、旨味の種類についてご説明いたします。
And this is a good point to take you through the different types of umami that exist.
トマトや昆布に含まれるグルタミン酸、魚や肉に含まれるイノシン酸、干した、マッシュルームに含まれるグアニル酸、そして貝類に含まれるアデニル酸、この旨味成分は4種類によって構成されています。
There are 4 types of umami elements. They are glutamic acid found in tomatoes and kelp, inosinic acid found in fish and meat, guanylic acid found in dried mushrooms, and adenylinic acid found in shellfish.
先ほどご説明いたしました一番だしは昆布のグルタミン酸とカツオのイノシン酸が合わさることによって8倍の相乗効果をもたらします。
The ichiban dashi that I just showed you how to make includes glutamic acid from the kelp and inosinic acid from the bonito. And combining these two gives you 8 times more umami.
あと、昆布のグルタミン酸とドライマッシュルームのグアニル酸を合わせると15倍の相乗効果が生まれます。
If you combine glutamic acid from kelp with guanilic acid from dried mushrooms, you get 15 times more umami.
ドライマッシュルームのグアニル酸にも非常に強い旨味成分が含まれております。
Dried mushrooms are actually really packed full of guanilic acid.
この旨味成分の効いた出汁を用いることで、低カロリーかつ美味しい料理を作り出すのが日本料理の特徴です。そして、この旨味の出汁はゼロカロリーです。そして減塩作用もあります。
This dashi is characteristic of Japanese cuisine, and it's used to create low-calorie, delicious dishes using this umami component, these umami components. Dashi has 0 calories, and you also find yourself using less salt.
そして最後に、日本では食事をする際に、いただきますと言います。このいただきますとはただ単に食べ物を体内に入れるという意味だけではありません。
Before we start a meal in Japan, we say itadakimasu. Itadakimasu means I receive, but it doesn't just mean I receive this food and eat it.
これは肉、魚、野菜などの命のあるものに対して、あなたの命をいただきます。あなたの命は私の命として生き続けます。という感謝の込めた言葉です。
These are words of gratitude. We are telling the animals, the fish, the vegetables who are giving us their lives, that we're receiving their lives, and we will carry on living for them.
だから自分のために命を落としてくれたものに対して、粗末にしては申し訳ないということで、日本人は、食べ物を残さず全部食べる、そして粗末にはしていけないという考えます。これをもったいないと言っています。
It's for this reason that Japanese people believe that we should not waste food because lives have been given to create this food. We feel bad if we waste the food because of those lives that have been given for us. And the word that represents this is mottainai.
最後に、食文化、食習慣は、それぞれの国の宗教、文化、風習、気候風土によって大きく変わります。今日は日本の食文化、食習慣を通じ、日本のことをもっと知るきっかけになってほしいと思って、このように、レクチャーをさせていただきました。
Food culture and customs vary greatly from country to country, depending on the religion, the culture, the customs, and the climate. I hope that today will inspire you to learn more about Japan through its food culture and customs.
はい、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Chef Hayashi. That was very fascinating. You picked up on the high water content. At this point, I just wondered if there was some, you spoke about climate as well. And I wonder if, because Japan is such a hot country, especially in summer, if the high water content sort of plays into the fact that people need to keep hydrated in Japan, perhaps more than is necessary here. Do you think that's playing a role?
そうですね。西洋の料理は、油脂と、糖分で構成されているのですけども、日本はこの旨味成分ゼロカロリーの出汁を用いる。なぜかと言いますと、昔日本は300年間の鎖国によって、砂糖も入らない、オイルも入らないということで、この旨味成分を活用するところから、出汁を水をたくさん使うということが特徴と言えます。
Well, as opposed to Western cuisine that uses a lot of sugars and fats, we do use a lot of ingredients that have this umami and are very low calorie. This stems back to the fact that Japan was closed to the rest of the world for 300 years and there was no sugar and there were no oils coming into the country. And so to make the most of the ingredients that we had and to draw out the umami to flavor our food, we ended up using a lot of water in our cooking.
で、この3種類の成分ですけども、油脂と甘みと旨味成分って、この3つの成分はお母さんの母乳に含まれている成分なんですね。
These three components, the oil, the sweetness of the sugar, and the umami, are actually all there from the very beginning in our mother's breast milk.
So the utilization of umami is actually a humanly produced compound that is being utilized in Japanese cooking. That is very fascinating. And there's also a sort of political aspect to it there as well, sort of born from necessity, both by nature and also by politics. I think that's truly fascinating. And we'll come back to some of these points a little bit later. If there's anything people at home want to ask about the presentation or Japanese cooking in generally, please do put it in the Q&A. One thing that came up in your presentation was about nature and seasons, and when I think of London and where can I see nature in London, I do think of Kew. And I was just a bit curious how you sort of use seasonal ingredients in your menu at Kew that you developed with Chef Berwa. Can you just talk a little bit about that, please?
そうですね、これから秋ですので、マッシュルームであったりとか、秋の季節の食材を、対応しました。
Yes, we did try to make the most of autumnal ingredients, including mushrooms in the menu.
Yes, I think Chef Berwa will have a little bit more to say on that. But before we ask Berwa to join us, let's take a quick look at how you guys got on in the kitchen at Kew.
The collaboration with Chef Hayashi is fantastic. It means that the food that we're delivering is authentic as we can do. It's especially important when we're trying to replicate another cuisine that isn't our own.
I started with Chef Hayashi. I wanted to know what we're going to do here over the period will be as authentic Japanese as possible. We discussed ideas, we both designed menus and compared them, and we had his amazing input into the menus. Every cuisine is different. And the great thing about what I do is I learn a lot from every cuisine, and working and collaborating with different chefs, I always learn more. There's a lot of things I always think I know, but I can always learn more. We sat down, we went through our plans and recipes again, and when we started prepping, we started trying different methods of cooking, different recipes and different styles. We're going to have another tasting again, just ahead of the festival. We just want to make sure, again, to be as authentic as possible. So this is why we're cooking again and again and again, and we're training our teams here as well to make sure that it's delivered in the right way. We did that several times actually today. We went through recipes quite a few times, and because each time we created something, we all tasted it together, but then we asked opinions as well, and we worked around it again, and when we did them again, it was a fantastic day. I'm really happy and I really enjoyed it.
Chef Brwa was a very inquisitive and enthusiastic chef. All the staff were friendly, well trained, and I could tell straight away that they were top chefs. It was a pleasure to spend time with them and to cook together. I hope to have the opportunity to work together again.
And it was really lovely for us to be there and see the chefs working in the kitchen together. And here are a few dishes that they produced. This is a miso marinated tofu, a vegetarian dish. This is a katsu curry, which I'm sure many people have tried before, but this is actually made with seitan, which means it's vegan friendly, but still equally as delicious. And then this is nasu dengaku, which is a miso on aubergine, which is packed full of umami, just as we've been talking about earlier. So the video we just took a look at was produced as part of the collaboration between Chef Hayashi and Kew. You can see that full series on YouTube at the moment, but we also wanted to show you some behind the scenes moments that didn't actually make it into the final cut. Some really lovely moments actually of Chef Hayashi teaching the chefs at Kew first how to make chirashi sushi, which is a kind of sushi with rice prepared on a plate with some thin slices of egg and some chopped fish, but the rice is still seasoned. So that actually featured as part of the menu at Kew. But one thing that didn't feature was nigiri sushi, which is more recognizable, I suppose, with the fish lying on top of the rice. So there's this fantastic video of the chefs having a bit of fun in the kitchen, learning how to make that. So let's take a quick look.
Okay, I'll try one more. Oh, hold on, don't wash your hand.
No, I didn't wash my hand.
You know, I've done this before.
Yeah?
With the bamboo rolls and actual rolls with nori and everything. Not quite this one.
Yes, it's nice. Simple. Oh, okay. Side. Down. Sit.
I like that one. Yeah, no, I like that one. It feels so cool. I like the brown one.
So, I mean, watching that, you could believe that this, they barely had any work to do in the kitchen, but you wouldn't believe how hard they worked. And I wonder if you heard in the background, the kitchen was actually in service during the training. And not only that, there was 2 cameras in there trying to capture the whole thing. So it really was a whirlwind day, and I was astonished by how many dishes they managed to get through. The work ethic has been quite frankly phenomenal. So now I'd like to invite the other star of the show of producing this menu, Berwa Ahmed, to join us. He's the executive head chef at Kew Gardens and has worked making complimentary menus to a variety of festivals at Kew over the years, because although the festival at the moment is based around Japan, there have been previous festivals based on Colombia and other places all over the world. So incorporating ingredients grown within the gardens themselves, he's been working with Chef Hayashi this time to produce the menu currently being served at Kew. So hello, Berwa.
Hello, Callum. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me here.
It's very good of you to join us. I take it you're in the kitchen now, are you?
I am still in my whites, and the kitchen is just behind the door.
So the kitchen has seen an awful lot of action over the last few months, I'm sure.
It has, as always, and particularly the Japanese cuisine and menu. It has been a new challenge for us. Another challenge in a way, difficult, but something new for us to learn and to look forward to, and also for the visitors and guests at the restaurant and at Kew Gardens.
Yeah, so how are things going? Has the food been popular?
It's going great, actually. It's fantastic, and for both the daytime and the late, given that the late is, as well as daytime, is very authentic Japanese cuisine. We've done our best to deliver as it should be, and obviously the way that Chef Hayashi has taken the time and came here to show us.
Yeah, exactly. And Chef Hayashi, just to you, and when you were working together on the Washoku menu, especially for the lates, which was a more formal 4-course menu, how did dashi feature as part of those recipes, and what sort of concepts were you bringing?
そうですね。日本料理は、先ほど言いましたけど、だしが、基本に成り立ってますんで、今回はそのだしと米を使った料理を入れること、そしてバター、クリーム、オイルを使わないということをテーマに、ブロワシェフと料理を作りました。
Yes, well, as I said, dashi and rice are really the basis of Japanese cuisine. So we wanted to put together a menu that featured dashi, rice, and also that didn't feature any butter, cream, or oil.
So did you find that difficult then, Berwa? You know, all of these things that maybe are common in Western kitchen, right? They're off limits, and we're going with dashi.
Yeah, Chef Hayashi had to remind me quite a few times, no cream, no butter. Me being trained mainly on French cuisine, where we use a lot of cream, a lot of butter, it was difficult to get away from this, but obviously I understood and took on what Chef Hayashi had to say and offer about well-being and healthy eating. And that is where he told me no salt, no oil, no cream, no butter.
But even without those things, did you find the dishes you created delicious? And be honest.
They were amazing. They were delicious, honestly. And I didn't know, because where I also come from when I was born, we use a lot of oil, a lot of salt as well. Everything is full of oil and salt. And to come to a point where I've cooked for 20 years in the kitchen, nearly 20 years cooking in the kitchen, and come to a point of full stop on oil, salt, cream and butter was very difficult. But then the experience that I took and learned from this is how amazing, how delicious it can be with a very simple ingredient, which being the dashi itself.
So Chef Hayashi, why do you think it is that dashi has got this power to make delicious food? You know, that you can cut away all the calories, you can cut away all the fat. You know, what's your secret? How are you managing this?
それは先ほどご説明しました旨味です。
It's the umami that I was talking about earlier.
So umami is the key. And you've given us the sort of recipes of how to think about these ingredients and how to create umami. So Chef Berwa, do you think you'll continue to use umami in your dishes going forward?
Absolutely. I will use the recipes that were created with Chef Hayashi, and I would use any of these at any time where possible, given where we are. And yeah, but definitely yes, especially dashi.
And how does dashi compare to sort of, say, imagine a French first broth or something that you might use?
The dashi would be a lot lighter. You won't feel the flavor of traditional broth that you'd have in a French cuisine, having a lot of celery, herbs, salt. You don't have those flavors, yet it's just as amazing. And it's just different in a different way. And it's fulfilling. It's filling as well. It's not just dashi or equivalent to vegetable broth. I think it's much, much better, maybe, in a way.
Oh, controversial, but maybe you've got a real convert here, Chef Hayashi.
It definitely has, yeah.
Yeah.
もうシェフバウアーはもう日本のシェフ以上に日本料理を理解してます。
I think Chef Berwa understands Japanese cuisine better than Japanese chefs.
Oh, thank you.
That's high praise. Yeah, and certainly
learnings. Thank you.
And certainly the way the menu's been received, I think quite possibly could be true.
It definitely is, yeah.
So before we move on to opening up the question to people from the audience to speak to the two chefs that we've got here, I just wanted to dive in a little bit more into the actual training session. So starting off with you, Chef Hayashi, how did you approach the training session? I mean, time was limited and you taught a phenomenal amount of dishes. What was your approach?
そうですね。まず和食を教える上で大切にしたことなんですけども、日本料理の定式に、5色、色ですね。5種類の色があります。それは赤と黄色と青と白と黒。この5種類の色があるんですけども、赤と黄色は食欲増進、青は清涼感、で白は清潔感、そして黒は料理を引き締める作用っていうのがあるんです。でその料理を作る際にこの5色を取り入れる、あと香りを取り入れるということを、大切に、シェフに伝えました。
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to get across when I was teaching the team about Washoku was about the formula that we have for using 5 colors in the dishes. And the colors are red, yellow, green, white, and black. Red and yellow stimulate the appetite. Green is to give a sense of refreshment. White gives a sense of cleanliness. And then black pulls the whole thing together. And it was important for me to get this across to the chefs, and also the use of aroma and smell.
Is this what you mean by eating with all the senses? Are we talking about the color of the ingredients?
もちろん五感です。はい。Yes.
of course you want to be using your five senses when you're eating.
Because there's this interesting expression, I wonder, Berwa, if you've ever heard it, that English people eat with their eyes. Have you ever heard that expression?
All the time, and the dishes that we created here, you could literally eat them with your eyes.
Yeah, they were gorgeous. I mean, we looked back at the chirashi sushi picture with all the edible flowers and all the decoration, and it was a visually stunning dish as well as an absolutely delicious dish. So I think you guys really managed to capture onto that. And Chef Hayashi, aside from colors, I was wondering what the most important principles of Washoku you were trying to get across in the training.
あとは、今、オータムのお祭りですんで、季節感ですよね。だから、今回は、キューガーデンで紅葉した葉っぱを敷き場に使ったりしました。
The fact that this is the autumn festival, I really wanted to get across the sense of seasonality. So we made use of some of the autumn leaves from Kew Gardens.
And Bo, what other sort of seasonal ingredients have you been using as part of this festival?
Two things I'd really wanted to use for a while, given that it's the time of year, was chestnuts and figs, which Chef Hayashi used just perfectly in our beef dish.
So what was the beef dish?
It was a rump of beef sous vide for about an hour, and then it was grilled on charcoal grill, because we have a Josper charcoal grill on live fire. It was grilled on there, and then we served it on the large hoba leaves with grilled baby leeks, with figs, with chestnuts, with lightly fried and crispy cassava.
Wow.
And that was, sorry, this was on a bed of 50 leaves, as you may have seen in the pictures.
Yeah, if you go on the YouTube after, you can see this video of them collecting all sorts of leaves from all across Kew Gardens to decorate the plate with, to again create, something you can eat with your eyes as well.
Something which I had to do quite a few times over the last few weeks.
And was there anything you found difficult or unusual, Chef Berwa, when you were approaching these dishes?
No, for two reasons. One, Chef Hayashi's approach to the teaching was quite welcoming and comforting and accommodating. And two, me being a chef, I'm a chef because I want to cook and learn more about food. And I became a chef because of my curiosity about food and why certain cuisines or certain styles of cooking. And it's been a lifelong curiosity to learn more about the Japanese food, and I understand and respect the culture and the cuisine a lot. There is a lot to learn, and it could take years and years and years, but to have learned a small amount, a very small portion in a short period of time with Chef Hayashi has been great.
Oh, that's really lovely to hear. And to you, Chef Hayashi, I'm just wondering, people who are listening at home, maybe they think it's too ambitious to be making, chestnut beef and finding leaves and all this sort of thing. Is there any dishes you recommend people could try if they want to cook washoku in their own kitchens?
家で簡単に作れる和食ですか？これからシェフバウアーが説明していただきます。
Something easy that people can make at home. I think Chef Berwa has something that he's going to teach us how to make.
Oh, a little baton pass to you there, Chef Berwa, but we have we'll test your knowledge.
This is I was shown by Chef Hayashi himself.
Okay.
So he's a master at this, but I will give it a go.
Great. Well, that's something to look forward to. And we've spoken actually quite a lot today about dashi. But dashi, sometimes you can only find it in specialist Asian grocery stores and that sort of thing, although you're starting to see it a bit more. You mentioned you can make dashi at home. Do you mind just quickly refreshing us on how to do it?
はい、これは先ほど説明しました一番だしですね。昆布とカツオのだし。はい。
So this is the kelp and bonito dashi, ichiban dashi that I mentioned earlier.
イギリスにはね、カツオと昆布ってなかなか簡単に手に入りませんので、同じ成分を用いた出汁の作り方をご説明します。
But you're right, it can be hard to get your hands on these ingredients in the UK. So I will teach you a different version of dashi with some easier to get ingredients.
トマトですね。このトマト、ドライトマト。ドライトマトは、グルタミン酸、野菜の中で一番グルタミン酸の含有量が高いんです。で、そして干したキノコ。イギリスのスーパーマーケットにこのミックスのドライマッシュルームっていうのが売ってるんですけども、この2つを使います。
The ingredients we're going to use are dried tomatoes. These contain the most glutamic acid of all vegetables, and then dried mushrooms, because I know that you can get packs of mixed dried mushrooms in UK supermarkets.
で、この分量のドライトマトとドライマッシュルームと水を、一晩水につけて、次の日に火にかけて沸騰しましたら弱火にして30分火にかけます。
Take the dried tomatoes and mushrooms and soak them overnight in 2 liters of water. Then you want to boil the water and turn the heat down to low and simmer for 30 minutes.
で、あとはこして、終わりです。そして、こした後のトマトとマッシュルームは、捨てずに、まあ、例えば、イタリアンでしたらトマトのパスタのソースに使ったりとか、絶対に捨てないようにしてください。
Then just strain and your dashi is done. Please don't throw away the tomatoes and the mushrooms though. You can use them, for example, in a pasta sauce.
はい、それでこの出汁を使って、バウアシェフが日本料理をレクチャーしてくれます。
And then Chef Brwa, you can show us how to use this dashi in a certain Japanese dish.
What dish would that be? Sorry.
Next slide. Let's get to the chawan mushi. Here we go. There we go.
Okay. The chawan mushi. Obviously, as a chef, I became a chef because I was curious, and the curiosity led me to creating a lot of things, and then trying to break it down and simplify it so everyone can recreate at home. And I think this is a perfect dish for that. As complex in a way and as tasty as it is, but it's really easy to also prepare. And the methods that Chef Hayashi taught us, there were quite a few, but the simplest way that I could put it is by lightly stirring the eggs. Oh, the pictures are there. To stir the eggs, and then that being mixed with the soy, with the sake, with the dashi and the mirin, all mixed together, pour into a bowl with the desired vegetables or fish or chicken or any other meat that you wish to, and that to be covered with cling film and steamed.
Yeah, so it really is that simple.
It is really simple.
Yeah, and it has all the components of umami that we were talking about before. You've got your mushrooms in there, you've got
That's
dashi.
great. The feedback that I had from my guests for the 4 nights was that if it kind of melted in the mouth, it was so light and it was so easy to digest, to taste different flavors, umami, yet you feel a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So I think at this point, we're actually going to open up the questions to the floor. We have some pre-submitted, and also there are some in the Q&A. So please do submit anything at all about Japanese cooking. One of them actually, from Vanessa Cutts, is kind of timely because we've been speaking about dried mushrooms. How are these mushrooms dried? Could you even dry them yourself at home?
So is that a question for me or for?
That's maybe to Chef Hayashi, if that's okay.
はい。自然にほっといたら乾燥しますけど、乾燥したやつ買った方が楽ですよ。
If you leave them long enough, they will dry out, but it's much easier to buy dried ones.
And is there any particular mushrooms, porcini mushrooms or just a mixed mushroom? Will any mushroom do that? Any?
ドライマッシュルームのいろんなドライマッシュルームありますけども、モリーユだけ、ドライモリーユ、それが、マッシュルームの中で一番、グアニル酸の含有量が高いです。
There are all sorts of dried mushrooms you can get, but morels have the highest level of guanilic acid.
一番高いですけどね。
They're also the most expensive.
Isn't that always the way? So here's a question we actually had submitted in advance that I'm slightly curious about myself. We've been speaking about washoku today quite a lot. And another word you hear when talking about Japanese food is nihonshoku. So I'm slightly curious, is there a difference there? Or are we referring to much the same thing when we use these words? And this, I take it, is to Chef Hayashi, unless Berwa, you really have become the true expert on Japanese food.
和食っていうのは世界無形文化遺産に認定されましたけども、今回旧のお祭りでお好み焼きとかもやりましたけど、そばとか、そういう日本でいうソウルフードも和食に含まれます。はい、和食はもうちょっと幅が広いですね。
Well, Washoku is it's been designated as intangible cultural heritage, but it also includes things like the dishes that were being served at the cafes at Kew, like soba, okonomiyaki, the Japanese soul food type of dishes.
Okay, so we're not necessarily talking about fine dining, it can be sort of canteen styled food as well.
そうですね。
Great.
Exactly.
And this is one for Berwa, actually, came from Andrea, who says she can't make it to the festival. So she's curious, will the menu stay? Will there be another chance to eat it? And which dish in particular would you recommend?
So the menu will stay on for a few days after the festival, which is at 31st of October, because we'll have a few days where we're going to transitioning into our other autumn menus. So yeah, for a few days, yes, or even probably a week, because we have a lot of demand for the Japanese food and Japanese cuisine. And which dish would I recommend? I would say the soy glazed aubergine, which was on the picture. It's one of my favorites. The chirashi sushi is no longer on a menu because this was for the late only, but otherwise I would have said the chirashi sushi, yes. Although Chef Hayashi tried to teach me nigiri as well, was looking back at the video, I was laughing because I was trying to. Chef Hayashi was talking about healthy eating and what quantities of rice and everything they put. And there was me trying to put a handful of rice on a small piece of fish.
Yeah, well, that's the way it goes sometimes. And I think water has come up in the discussion so far. And Berwa, I was wondering, soft water, London, not much of it. Were you using spring water or what kind of water were you using when you were making these dishes?
We were just using soft water.
Okay. And Chef Hayashi, what do you use in Rokketsu? Do you have to be as fancy as to use spring water or is that not necessary?
先ほどご説明しました一番だし、昆布とカツオのだしですけども、硬水で取りますと昆布の周りに膜を張ってしまってグルタミン酸が出ないんですよね。ですのでマグネシウムとカルシウムが低い、ボルビックなんかを使ったりしますね。
When making the ichiban dashi, as I mentioned, you want the water to be as soft as possible. If you're using hard water, it kind of forms a barrier around the kombu, around the kelp, and stops the glutamic acid from getting out. So you want water that has as little magnesium and calcium in it as possible. So I use Volvic or mineral waters like that.
Okay, so we're seeing another layer to the science here. We need to also have the appropriate medium to draw out the flavors that are going to give us umami in the end. That's very interesting. That's a takeaway. I didn't know that. Here's another question about the use of sake and mirin, which you see in a lot of recipes for Japanese food. They're saying that mirin is readily available in a lot of shops, but sake is quite difficult to buy. Can I use white wine as a substitute? Chef Hayashi.
いや、使えないです。
I'm afraid not.
Is there any
いや、
substitute?
使ってもらってもいいですけども、日本料理とはちょっと言い難いですね。
You could use it, but it may not turn out to be Japanese cuisine.
I see. And is that to do with maybe perhaps the acidity of wine is not suitable for creating the flavor palette you're going for?
そうですね。香りと酸味と、苦味がありますんで、ちょっと料理の邪魔をしてしまいます。
Yeah, the the aroma of the wine, the acidity, also the bitterness that it has kind of gets in the way of the flavors of the dish.
あと渋みもありますね。
Or that bit of bitterness that it has.
That's very, very interesting. So basically, we want to avoid putting a bit of Pinot into our Japanese food. So tomatoes are okay, but we don't want to be doing that. And we've had a question in the Q&A from Lindy, who talks about, it's fantastic that the recipe you've given us for dashi is a vegan recipe. Many people turning vegan these days. That's fantastic for people's health and for the environment as well. How difficult would it be to use that dashi as the base of most dishes? Like, could you use dashi as the base for a Western dish? Like a pie or a pasta? Could you use it there, or is that not really appropriate?
もちろん使えます。基本的に西洋の出汁は、牛の骨を使ったり、魚の骨を使ったりして、動物性タンパク質を入れますけども、それを使わなくても、この旨味の含有量が高い素材を使うことによって、植物性のゼロカロリーの出汁、旨味を、特徴とした、料理を作ることができますね。
You could definitely use it. In Western cuisine, you tend to find stocks that use animal bones, fish bones, animal proteins. But thanks to the umami, you can create this plant-based, zero-calorie, tasty dashi that you could use in your Western cuisine.
That's very interesting. And does umami get lost if it's competing with other flavors? Like, for example, if I was making a spaghetti bolognese or something and I was using a fair amount of salty flavors in there already, but I wanted to add some dashi in there, do I lose the umami in that environment? Is it sort of either or question, or can umami be playing with other flavors, strong flavors?
いえ、旨味はこう、出汁だけではなくて、素材を食べただけでも、この旨味って感じるんですね。
Umami doesn't just come from the dashi, you get umami from the other ingredients that you use as well.
So in that case, the dashi would be playing off the pre-existing ingredients to create an even more delicious dish, which is fantastic. I think we're going to start wrapping up now if there are no further questions. But we can still taste the delicious items created by Berwa and Chef Hayashi at Kew until 31st of October and a little bit longer. As has already been mentioned, the lates have now finished, so there's no chance to try tirashi sushi. But there are plenty of other delicious things available. And if you want to sample Chef Hayashi's cuisine directly, then Roketsu, London, is opening in November time. And this picture you're seeing is of the food you can expect there. So it really is a feast for all the senses, and I'm sure it will be of exceptional quality. So we're all very excited about that. Just like to close by drawing your attention to a few more events coming up from the embassy. We have an exhibition, Access and Ability in the Arts, Design and Technology, which is returning from the 26th, and that is highlighting artists and design firms that are creating solutions to make the world more accessible and equal for people living with disabilities. So please do stop by if you are in London. And we also have some online offerings coming up. Mainly being tomorrow, actually, we're back at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll be live streaming the opening of a Japanese anagama kiln, which has been fired for an exhibition at the embassy. So that'll be live streamed at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and I'm sure will be very exciting. That'll be the first look at any results, and I believe my colleagues are putting these links in the chat for those who are interested. So really, at this point, all's left to do is to thank Chef Daisuke Hayashi from Roketsu London for his amazing insight, and Chef Berwa Ahmed for taking the time to come and see us, and of course Bethan Jones for her phenomenal translation as well. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
And once this webinar finishes, there will be a very, very, very brief questionnaire. And if those watching today could kindly give us their feedback, we would really appreciate it, because it helps us know what kind of thing you want to see from the Embassy of Japan in the future and how well we're doing. So all's left to do is to wish you a good evening and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.